Hey, welcome everybody. I am your host, John, and this is Black and Gold Weekly, a weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube in partnership with Black and Gold Productions, and we are on episode 29 of the show. The NHL offseason is in full swing, not just for the Boston Bruins, but for the entire league. There's already been a lot happening, and with the entry draft, the expansion draft, and free agency all coming up, I don't expect things to slow down anytime soon. We've got a lot to talk about here with the Bruins as we are really ripping into off-season mode now. And going to be a really fun episode here. Hope you guys enjoy it. We're going to be talking about the Brandon Carlo contract. We're going to be talking about some potential bought-out defensemen that have already been linked to Boston. And we're going to be taking a look ahead to the expansion draft and what Boston's protection list might look like as well. So a lot going on in this episode. Before we begin, I do want to thank Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions for all of their support. This show would not be happening without them. And obviously it's in partnership with the Black and Gold crew. So thank you to them for making this thing happen. And as always, I want to point your attention down to the description of the video where we have 3 links down in the description. The first one is for Boston Bruins apparel. The second one is for NHL apparel, any team, whatever team you want. And the third one is for NCAA college apparel, whatever school you want to rep. There's a wide selection of products, all the normal stuff, hats, shirts, sweatshirts, pants, that kind of thing, and a ton of other accessories as well that you can choose from. So if you are interested or in the market for any of those things, it would be greatly appreciated if you check out the 3 links down in the description. The first one is for the Bruins, the second one is for any other NHL team, and the third one is for any NCAA college school. And it would really be appreciated. But we're going to get into things here. Obviously, the big news for Boston that's actually happened. There's been some rumblings that a Taylor Hall deal might be close. But as of me recording this, the biggest thing that's actually happened is Brandon Carlo, who was an RFA this summer, has re-signed with the Bruins. It's a 6-year deal worth $4.1 million per season. So his cap hit relatively low for a top 4 defenseman, which you love to see. And overall, I've given my thoughts on this on my Off the Wall Hockey channel. I did a whole video on this signing. And rather than just repeat myself and reiterate it, I'm just going to show you guys what my initial reaction was because it really hasn't changed. I absolutely love this deal. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play you guys the video that I did when the Carlo signing was announced. And rather than just repeat myself and say the same thing over again, I might as well just show you what I said the first time, right? So here are my thoughts on the Brandon Carlo contract with the Boston Bruins. Hey everybody, so we have got some big signing news this afternoon involving the Boston Bruins. They have re-signed restricted free agent defenseman Brandon Carlo to a 6-year contract worth $4.1 million per season, and I absolutely love this deal. This is very important for the Bruins to get Carlo back, and they have done it on a very team-friendly AAV as well. Super excited to get into this one. We'll delve into it here in just a second. Before we begin, I just ask that you please hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel an absolute ton and is greatly appreciated. But let's take a look here. Brandon Carlo returning to the Boston Bruins. So Brandon Carlo is a right shot defenseman, just 24 years old. He's already played in the NHL for a number of years, which makes it seem like he's older than he actually is. But he's played 324 career games, scoring 15 goals, 40 assists for 55 points, and a plus 58 rating. Now, he did miss a lot of this past season due to a concussion sustained on a hit from Tom Wilson, and we'll get more into the injury issues after, but he played 27 games this year, scoring 3 goals and 1 assist for 4 points and a +1 rating, but the stats are very deceiving with Brandon Carlo. This kid is one of the best young shutdown defensive defensemen in the NHL, and he does what he does best, and that is keep the puck out of his own net. And he is incredibly good defensively and incredibly important to the Boston Bruins back end. So, as I said, it's a 6-year deal with a cap hit of $4.1 million per season, which is very, very team friendly given how good Carlo is defensively. Anytime that you can get a right shot shutdown defenseman for this low of a cap hit, under $4.5 million per year, that is a huge win for the Boston Bruins, and I absolutely love this deal. Brandon Carlo is one of the most important players on the Bruins, and we saw that this past playoffs when he got injured against the New York Islanders. That completely changed that series, and I 100% believe that the Bruins would have won that series if Carlo had stayed healthy. If he hadn't gotten hurt, there's no way Boston's defense would have collapsed the way that it did with Carlo still in the lineup. And I think Carlo is a much better player than a lot of people realize, especially outside of Boston. Obviously, he doesn't do a ton offensively, and I do think there's still room to grow with him offensively. I think he can become a guy who gives you 25 points, 30 points a year from the back end, but he's not really at that point yet as far as offensive output. It really doesn't matter. Brandon Carlo is not there for offensive output. Brandon Carlo is a shutdown defensive defenseman who is incredibly strong in his own zone, and he can take out the other team's top players and shut them down. And he's done that already at a very, very young age in the NHL. And I just absolutely love this deal. Absolutely love this deal. He's only 24, so I'm not worried about the 6 years. I think the cap hit is extremely team-friendly. This is just all around tremendous for the Boston Bruins. This is a guy who is so important to this team, a deal that had to get done, and a player that had to be back for the Boston Bruins. And to get him on this kind of contract is an absolute win. I don't know what else to say. I just absolutely love this. It's an A+ move for Don Sweeney in the Bruins front office. An A+ move. This guy is so important to the team. He showed it this past year. How much the Boston Bruins are a significantly better team, an astronomically better team with Brandon Carlo in the lineup versus when he's not. And I can't reiterate enough for the people who don't get to watch the Bruins on a regular basis how important he is to the Bruins defense core and how good he is defensively as a shutdown guy at just 24 years old. It's incredible, and to get him at this low of a cap hit is absolutely phenomenal for Boston. The only concern I have is his health and his injury history. Obviously, he missed a decent amount of time during the regular season after the hit by Tom Wilson, which concussed him. He does have a concussion history now and has had multiple concussions. He also obviously got injured in the Islanders series in the playoffs. He took a big hit from Cal Clutterbuck and wasn't able to play the rest of the series after that. So the only concern for me is the fact that sometimes staying healthy is an issue for Carlo, But, man, when he is in the lineup and when he is healthy, he is one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL. He's one of the best young shutdown D-men in the NHL, and he is everything the Bruins need in their own zone to shut down opponents' top offensive players. He's a great penalty killer as well. I love everything about this deal. Boston needed to get Carlo back. They could not afford to lose him, and they have done it. And, I mean, young, right-shot defenseman. Again, I still think he has room to grow offensively. I think he can get up to being a 25-point guy in a regular season offensively. I don't think that part of his game is fully developed yet, but I'm not even worried about that because he's so good defensively. Other players around the league who are also shutdown defensemen could easily making $5+ million per year, and to get Carlo at 4.1 is just absolutely outstanding. So huge kudos to Don Sweeney for this deal. Extremely happy to have Brandon Carlo locked up for the Bruins, and he's going to be wearing the spoked B for the foreseeable future. Incredibly good young defensive defenseman, and I cannot wait to see his career continue and how he looks this coming season and all of that, because I still think there's room to get better. I think he's already a great shutdown guy, and he is just getting started at 24 years old. Absolutely love this deal. 6 years, $4.1 million AAV for Brandon Carlo to stay in Boston. Great top four guy, great penalty killer, shutdown defenseman, and really, really excited to see this moving forward. So, as you guys can see, I am a big fan of this deal with Brandon Carlo and the Bruins. Again, like I said in the video, my only real hesitancy or question is the health of Brandon Carlo, because he does have a pretty extensive injury history for such a young player, and the concussion history definitely is a little worrisome, but the cap hit is low enough where that isn't a huge issue. 6 years is a long time, but he's only 24 years old. If he can stay healthy, this contract will be an absolute steal for the Boston Bruins, and I am super, super excited about it. So the next thing I want to get into are a couple of defensemen who were recently bought out by their old teams, have been linked to Boston already. Pretty much as soon as they were bought out, obviously becoming unrestricted free agents, Boston is a team that has come up, and that is Ryan Suter, who was recently with the Minnesota Wild, and Keith Yandle, who was recently with the Florida Panthers and has been linked to Boston many, many times before. So I want to start with Ryan Suter, because I would absolutely love to see, if the deal is right, Ryan Suter in a Boston Bruins uniform. I personally was very surprised that Minnesota bought him out. He's still playing at a very high level. No, he's not the player that he was, 4 or 5 years ago. No, he's not putting up offensive numbers that he was 4 or 5 years ago, but he's still a very, very solid top four defenseman who's very good defensively and is a minute eater. I mean, this guy plays a ton and still, I think, has a lot left in the tank. Maybe not as a true number one NHL defenseman, but a lot left in the tank as a really solid top four guy. So I would love to see the Bruins take a look at Ryan Suter and see what he's looking for in free agency this year. If we take a look at Suter, he's 36 years old now, but again, I think he's got at least another 2 really good seasons in him. He's played almost 1,200 games in the NHL, scoring over 600 points, and is over plus 100 in his career, plus-minus wise. He can play in all situations. I wouldn't envision him playing power play time with Boston, but he's a great penalty killer. And is a really good shutdown defenseman who's got a ton of experience and has been in the league for a long time. Obviously, he started out with the Nashville Predators and then signed that massive deal in the 2012 offseason with Minnesota that he was just bought out from. He had a pretty down year offensively last year with only 19 points in 56 games. However, before that, he had been a consistent 40-plus point guy and has even hit 50-plus points in some years throughout his career. Now, like I said, he's slowed down a little bit offensively, and that's to be expected at his age, but he is still a very, very solid defenseman, in my opinion, and still can play in a top 4 role and be really, really good at, especially in the defensive zone. I like what Ryan Suter brings to the table, and he is a left shot, which is the side that Boston needs work on. We've been talking about that all offseason. They need help on that left side. I would love to see the Bruins at least be on the phone asking about Ryan Suter, because I think he could be a really good fit here. You could play him with Carlo, and that could be such a shutdown pair. Or you could play him with McAvoy and then bump Grizz down with Carlo. And then you would, I think that could be a really effective top 4 as well. And then if you bring back Mike Riley, you put him on the bottom pair. And, I mean, you've filled out this defense pretty darn well. I think Ryan Suter would be a tremendous addition to the Boston Bruins. And I think they at least should be on the phone asking about him, because I know he just got bought out, but I still think he's playing at a pretty high level. Not an elite number 1 level, but definitely a top 4 level. And he can play in a lot of different situations, which will help the Bruins back end. It brings a ton of experience to the table. And still, I think, has a lot left in the tank. At least 2 more really good seasons in him. The other player that was just bought out was Keith Yandle from the Florida Panthers. Now, he is from Boston, from Massachusetts. So, obviously, once you have a local guy like that, the ties are already being made. However, in my personal opinion, I do not want to see Keith Yandle come to Boston. He's played over 1,000 games. He's got 600 career points, a -56 career rating, but he's 34 years old. His defensive game continues to get worse and worse, and the offense is starting to go away. As we've seen over the past couple years, he had a 62-point season in 2018-19. That was down to 45 points in 2019-20. Now, 2019-20 was cut short, so that wasn't a full 82 games. But then, this past season, he played all 56 games for the Florida Panthers, but he only had 27 points, which was one of the worst offensive years in Keith Yandle's career. Actually, his lowest point total in a single season until you go back to his first real rookie season in 2007-2008, where he had 12 points in 43 games. Honestly, it's been really downhill the past couple years for Keith Yandle. And I'm just going to say this right now. He is a defensive liability. I mean, I don't know how much you guys have watched the Panthers or how much you guys have seen him play over the past few years, but he is a defensive liability. And he used to make up for it with the offense, but the offense isn't at that level anymore where it's making up for how bad he is defensively. So now he's making your team worse, and that is exactly why the Florida Panthers just bought him out. Most of his offense came on the power play. Didn't have a great year on the power play this year. Didn't have a great year at all this year. Boston already has guys for the power play. They've got McAvoy and Grzelcyk, and if they bring back Mike Riley, Riley too can play power play. So they don't need a power play guy, and he doesn't do anything else. I mean, his 5-on-5 offensive numbers are dwindling, and like I said, he's a complete liability in his own zone. He turns the puck over a ton. I don't see what the appeal is with Keith Yandle and why anyone would really want to sign him at this point. At best, he's a bottom pair power play specialist. Very similar to what Eric Gustafsson was this past year between Philadelphia and Montreal. And if you watched him play, it was absolutely brutal to watch. I think Boston should absolutely stay as far away from Keith Yandle as they possibly can. And I know he's a local guy, so those connections are always going to be there. And it's nothing personal against Keith Yandle. I'm sure he's a great guy. He's on Spittin' Chicklets all the time. He seems like a really funny, good guy. But on the ice, watching this guy play, I do not want him in a Boston Bruins uniform. The defensive zone play is horrendous, and he doesn't have the offensive output that he used to that kind of made up for how bad he was defensively. So at that point, you would be making your team worse. I think there are much better options out there on the left side for the Bruins, and I think that they should do everything. I'd rather Boston just keep the defense that they have than bring in Keith Yandle. And I've already said on this show in the past few weeks that Boston needs to improve their defense. But I would rather they stay exactly the same than bring in Keith Yandle. This guy will not do anything to make the Boston Bruins better, in my opinion. So, I mean, Florida scratched him at the end of the playoffs. The first round, he played the first couple games against Tampa Bay and was a healthy scratch for the rest of that series as Florida lost in the first round. I think that says all you need to know. That he was a healthy scratch in the playoffs. That's all you need to know right there. I don't want to see Keith Yandle in Boston. I'm just not a Yandle guy. I don't think at this point he brings anything to the table that the Bruins need. The offense is declining and the defensive game is terrible. It's always been bad, but it's getting worse. He's in his mid-30s now. I just don't think it's something that the Bruins need to do. There are much, much better options out there, including the first guy we talked about, Ryan Suter. So I am not in on Keith Yandle, but I'm sure that those rumors will float around because Yandle is from Massachusetts and there's that local connection there, so they always do. But those are two recently bought-out defensemen that have already been linked to Boston as possible signings this offseason. They're both left-shot D-men, which obviously Boston very much in the market for. And Suter, I would absolutely love to see in a Bruins uniform at the right price. I think he can really be a very good asset to this team. Yandle, I am staying clear from 100%. I don't like what I've seen from him in recent years with Florida, and I don't think he would make the Bruins any better. So I wanted to talk about those two because there already have been a lot of connections being made to Boston possibly being in on them in free agency. The final thing I want to do in this episode is talk about the expansion draft Saturday, July 17th, which will be right after this episode airs, the day after this episode comes out. Protection lists are due. So obviously we won't know Boston's until after this show airs, which means it's a great time for me to go through, look at Boston's lineup, and kind of do like a mock protection list on who I would be protecting if I were the Boston Bruins, and talk about some of the guys that could be taken in the expansion draft and who Boston should be keeping. So to do that, I have gone to Cap Friendly, which under their interactive tab has a Seattle Kraken expansion draft simulator where you can do exactly what I am going to do here, which is go through their protection list, or basically create a protection list for the Boston Bruins, and let's see what we got here. So let's queue up Cap Friendly here. And what Cap Friendly does is mark everyone in green who would need to be protected, and then lets you put the check mark next to guys that you would want to protect and leave open the guys that you don't. So let's take a look here at the Boston Bruins. Now, I think that the Bruins are going to be doing the 7-3-1 protection rather than just 8 skaters and a goalie. I think that they're going to be doing 7-3-1, which means 7 forwards, 3D, and 1 goaltender. As you can see, David Krejci is not green. That is because he is an unsigned, unrestricted free agent, as is Taylor Hall. So those guys would not need to be protected because they're not signed. Now, if they were to sign before the protection lists are made, before the expansion draft, which is coming up on next Wednesday, then they would need to be protected, obviously, for Boston to, or else they'd be available for Seattle to take. Now, Seattle could take a UFA, I believe, but because they're unrestricted, I mean, wouldn't you just wait until free agency. Well, anyway, we'll see what happens with that. But for the sake of this, I'm not going to include Hall or Krejci or any of them because they're not currently under contract. I'm only going to look at guys that are currently under contract with the Boston Bruins. So let's start with the forwards here. And right out of the gate, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, and Charlie Coyle are automatically protected because they have no movement clauses in their contracts, which means they have to be protected. So there are 3 out of the 7 forwards right away that are automatically protected. David Pastrnak, obviously the next one to get clicked. Boston is not going to leave David Pastrnak unprotected. He is their best right wing, one of their best goals, probably their best goal scorer, and obviously a top-line guy that isn't going anywhere. Craig Smith will definitely get protected by the Boston Bruins. Obviously, he's got 2 years left on his deal that he signed last offseason. He proved this year to be a very valuable middle six winger who can play on the second line or the third line. I like Craig Smith's game a lot. I like what he brings to the table. Craig Smith is absolutely going to be protected. Jake DeBrusk, I've made my feelings very, very clear with Jake DeBrusk. I am done with him. My patience is run out. I personally would be leaving him unprotected. If Seattle takes him, great. If not, you can trade him at Edmonton or something this offseason. I don't want Jake DeBrusk back with the Bruins next year. My patience is run thin. I'm done with him. I know some within the organization and some fans may feel differently and want to give him another shot. But the last 2 seasons for him have been downhill. And I've seen enough personally. So for me, I'm not protecting Jake DeBrusk. Trent Frederic. I'm protecting Trent Frederic. I think he can still be a very, very valuable player on the 4th line for the Bruins and hopefully become an NHL regular this coming season. So Trent gets a check mark from me. I definitely want to see him stay in Boston. So there we have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6. That means Boston gets to protect one more forward. And it really comes down between DeBrusk and Lazar. I'm keeping Lazar personally as my 4th line forward. Or Wagner. Wagner's still available too, but Wagner had such a brutal year last year that there is no chance I'm protecting him. So yeah, Curtis Lazar would get that 7th check for me. I would protect Lazar. He's your 4th line center next season, I think. I think Corrali's going to be leaving in free agency. And Lazar's going to be taking that spot. Frederic hopefully will be on the left wing on the 4th line. And those would be my 7 forwards. That would leave Jake DeBrusk. That would leave Chris Wagner available. And then obviously you have unrestricted free agents like Corrali, Hall, and Krejci, and then you have unsigned restricted free agents, Andre Kasha and Nick Ritchie, who are still available, but those would be my 7 forwards. The defense for me, that is really, really easy. Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo, and Matt Grzelcyk are your 3 defensemen that you are protecting if you are the Bruins. Obviously, McAvoy is your franchise Norris Trophy guy on the right side. Grzelcyk, you just signed to a medium-term deal last offseason. You're definitely keeping him around on the left side. And Brandon Carlo, as we talked about earlier in the show, just signed a 6-year deal. He's obviously going to be protected. That leaves Connor Clifton, Jeremy Lauzon, and Jakub Zboril as open defensemen for Seattle to potentially take. Jared Tenorti is a UFA, so he'll be gone anyway, most likely. But really, that Lauzon, Clifton, or Zboril would be the guys that Seattle would have to choose from as far as defensemen go. And then Mike Riley's obviously an unrestricted free agent as well. And then you get to the goaltenders. Well, Tuukka Rask and Jaro Halak are both UFAs. They don't have contracts, so there's no point in wasting a protection spot on them. This is easy. Dan Vladar. Dan Vladar is your goaltender that you are protecting if you're the Boston Bruins. Obviously, Swayman does not need to be protected because he was a rookie last year. He only played 10 games. He is not eligible. He is on this exempt list over here. So Boston doesn't have to worry about Jeremy Swayman. Vladar is the young guy that they keep. And that would be my protection list for the Boston Bruins. At forward, we have Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle, Craig Smith, Trent Frederick, and Curtis Lazar. On defense, we have Charlie McAvoy, Matt Grzelcyk, and Brandon Carlo. And in goal, we have Daniel Vladar. That would leave open, I guess, the possibilities for Seattle to... I don't know what happens if Seattle would select a UFA. I don't know why Seattle would select a UFA because they would still have to sign them to a contract. I guess they would get exclusive negotiating rights up until July 28th. I guess that would be the draw to picking a UFA. But if I'm Seattle, that's a risky move. I don't know if I'm doing that. If I'm Seattle, I'm looking at Jake DeBrusk, definitely. I mean, he's still 24 years old. Just because he's fallen out of favor with me doesn't mean that I'm right or that he's never going to amount to much in the NHL. Seattle could take a chance there and see if a fresh start for DeBrusk and maybe some, time higher in the lineup could result in him, ending up, turning out pretty good. That's worth a shot. I mean, you've got... Obviously, Chris Wagner, I mean, if you're looking for a fourth-line guy, I don't know if Seattle would ever go that direction, but he's available. On the back end, they have Clifton or Lauzon or Zaboral to choose from. I think Clifton and Lauzon are definitely the most, what's the word? Just like the most likely of those three, I guess, the most desirable. That's the word I was looking for. Clifton or Lauzon would be the most desirable if I'm Seattle. I haven't seen much that I really have liked from Zaboral. I've about had it with him the same way I have with DeBrusk. Boston probably isn't going to be losing a huge player to the Seattle Kraken. But there will be, a few decent guys left available. But that would be my protection list for Boston if I were the GM. And those are the guys that I would be protecting. And those other guys would be the ones I'd be leaving unprotected in this year's expansion draft. So that is going to do it, everybody, for episode 29 of Black and Gold Weekly. Again, I want to give a huge thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show is in partnership with them and would not be happening without them, so thank you so much, and thank you for all the support. One last time, I want to draw your attention to the links in the description. Boston Bruins gear, NHL gear, NCAA college gear, all of it. 3 links down in the description. Wide variety of products, a lot to choose from. It would be absolutely awesome if you guys could check those out if you're in the market for any of those things. And that is going to do it here for episode 29. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and by the time we get to next week's, the expansion draft will have happened. So we will know which player Boston has lost. We'll know what their protection lists look like. We may have some more signings and other things like that happening. It's full-time off-season mode now with the Bruins and with the entire NHL, and there is a lot going on. So we'll have plenty to talk about next episode. Thank you guys again so much. Really, really appreciate it, and I'll be talking to you all soon.